He thought she was just another shopper in trouble. A petty thief grabbed her purse, and without thinking twice, he chased the man down and got it back. She thanked him quietly, smiled, and walked away. But the next morning she showed up at the security office, not with a complaint, but with keys. Turns out she wasn't just a customer. She was the new owner of the entire mall, and his life, it was about to change forever. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? The mall was already humming by 8:45 a.m. Storefront gates rattled open like a row of steel jaws. The floor buffers screeched softly as they polished the tiles to a sterile shine, and a mixture of cinnamon and chlorine wafted through the air. The scent of Auntie Anne's pretzels and bleach, never quite separating. Derek adjusted his slightly faded security badge and took one last look in the mirror of the break room. His uniform, while clean, was a little too snug around the arms. He'd been too busy working double shifts to hit the gym like he used to. He ran a hand over his neatly trimmed beard, sighed, and clipped his walkie-talkie to his belt. "Morning, Johnson," he said, as he passed the janitor. Read it in the hallway." The old man grunted, but didn't look up. Derek didn't take it personally. He'd grown used to it. People passed by him like he was a fixture, less a person, more a background object. Like the benches or the faded "You Are Here" directory, no one ever really looked at. He made his rounds, methodical as always. Down the west wing, past the nail salon, where the smell of acetone hung in the air like a warning. Past the electronics store, where teenagers loitered, pretending not to notice him. One of them made a low whistle and muttered, "Malkop," to his friend. They both laughed. He kept walking. At the food court, the early morning vendors were prepping trays of lukewarm breakfast sandwiches. He bought a small black coffee, not because he wanted it, but because it gave him an excuse to sit for a few minutes. He picked the bench furthest from the noise, just under a skylight, where the sun pooled onto the tile like gold. He watched the families trickle in, kids dragging their feet, parents staring at their phones. Nobody made eye contact. It used to bother him, the invisibility. The way people only saw him when they wanted someone to blame, a stolen wallet, a kid throwing fries, a wet floor someone slipped on. That's when they remembered his name. But today, he felt it a little more than usual. Maybe it was the way his paycheck still hadn't cleared, or the letter from his landlord, folded neatly in his back pocket. He sipped the coffee, lukewarm already, and let the quiet settle over him. Another day, another shift. Just keep people safe, he reminded himself, even if no one noticed. The food court buzzed with the usual midday chaos, sneakers squeaking across freshly mopped tiles, trays clattering, conversations rising and falling like waves. Derek sat alone at a small table near the edge, his back to the wall, eyes on the crowd. His lunch was modest: a cold turkey sandwich from home, a bottle of water, and a single packet of mustard he'd swiped from the condiment counter. He never used it, but having it made the meal feel less bare. He chewed slowly, eyes constantly scanning, not out of paranoia, just habit. A teenager tried to slip a soda into his backpack without paying. Derek didn't move, just raised an eyebrow and shook his head from across the food court. The kid froze, sheepish, and returned the bottle. No need for words, no need for paperwork. That was how Derek preferred it. From the opposite end of the food court came the unmistakable sound of laughter. His co-workers. Two other guards, Jason and Mike, strolled over, each with a tray overloaded with greasy fast food. Jason had ketchup smeared on the side of his mouth and an oversized drink in hand. Mike wore his uniform shirt half untucked, looking more like he was on summer vacation than mall duty. "Still playing secret agent, Derek?" Jason smirked, popping a fry into his mouth. Derek didn't answer right away. He simply nodded toward a group of middle schoolers roughhousing near the carousel. "That kid just tripped a girl. Third time this week. Might want to keep an eye on him." Mike groaned dramatically. "Man, you ever turn it off?" "It's lunch, bro. Sit back, eat. Pretend the world's not going to fall apart if you blink." Derek offered a half smile, not unkind. Someone's got to care. Jason shook his head, laughing. You care too much, man. This ain't the Secret Service. You're guarding Cinnabon and flip-flops. They wandered off, still chuckling, leaving Derek in silence again. He took another bite of his sandwich, chewing slowly. His stomach wasn't in it. He didn't mind the jokes. Not really. What stung more was knowing they'd already written him off. Just a guy who tried too hard at a job no one took seriously. But Derek knew something they didn't. Trouble never knocked. It slipped in quietly while everyone else was laughing, eating, looking the other way. And today, he had a feeling it was already here. He spotted her from across the atrium, small and alone, no more than 6 years old, standing frozen in front of the fountain like a doll someone had forgotten. Her little arms hugged a stuffed unicorn to her chest, her eyes scanning the crowd, wide and wet. She wasn't crying yet, but she was on the edge of it. Derek set down his coffee without a second thought. The food court melted away behind him as he cut across the polished tile, weaving through distracted shoppers and strollers. He moved with calm precision, like every step was rehearsed, like he'd done this before. And he had. Too many times. He knelt down in front of the girl, slowly, hands visible, voice soft. Hey there, kiddo. You okay? You with someone? She looked at him like he'd spoken a different language. Then her lower lip trembled. My mom was right here, she whispered. I was looking at the fountain and now I can't find her. Derek offered a small smile. We're going to fix that. You want to come with me? She nodded, gripping her unicorn tighter. He offered a hand. She took it. They walked together, tiny footsteps beside his heavy boots, weaving past window displays and sale signs. Derek clicked his radio, gave a quiet update. No panic, no drama. He kept his voice calm and steady so the girl wouldn't sense the tension behind it. It took 10 minutes to find the mother, frantic near the escalators, screaming into her phone. I told her to stay right next to me. I turned around for 1 second. She cut off when she saw her daughter, eyes wide. Oh, my God! The girl let go of Derek's hand and ran to her mother. There was a flurry of hugs, kisses, scolding relief. The mother barely spared Derek a glance. She wandered off, he said simply, then turned to go. Yeah, thanks, the woman muttered, already pulling her daughter toward the parking lot. Derek didn't respond. He didn't need to. He walked back toward the food court with quiet footsteps and an empty expression. But his heart wasn't heavy. He didn't do it for thanks. He never had. As he sat back down, someone else might have seen a tired man in a security uniform eating a soggy sandwich alone. But he knew who he was. And that was enough. It was the way she moved that caught Derek's eye. Not fast, not slow, just deliberate, purposeful, like she was studying something. She wasn't like the other early afternoon shoppers who shuffled aimlessly from one store window to the next, eyes glazed, brains half occupied. This woman's eyes were sharp, darting between storefronts, taking in the layout, the spacing, even the way employees greeted customers. She wore a crisp, camel-colored coat, dark jeans, and ankle boots that clicked softly against the tile with every step. Her hair was pulled back in a loose knot, and in one hand she carried a small black leather notebook. She didn't glance at her phone once. Derek, leaning against the second-floor railing near the escalators, watched her weave through the crowd like she didn't belong to it. She passed the coffee kiosk without breaking stride, paused briefly outside a struggling shoe store, jotted something down in the notebook, and then moved on. She wasn't browsing. She was surveying. He pressed the radio to his shoulder. Dispatch. You got eyes on a female, mid-30s, long coat, black notebook? Upper level? There was a pause, then static. Copy that, Derek. You thinking loss prevention? Not sure yet, he muttered. Just watching. He kept following her from a distance, not in a way that would alarm her, just tracking. It wasn't the kind of behavior that set off alarms, but it didn't match the patterns he'd come to know. She looked at emergency exits, noted the placement of cameras, walked into stores, didn't buy anything, asked short questions, then left. After 10 minutes, she stopped in the center of the atrium and slowly turned in a full circle, notebook in hand, like she was picturing something, calculating. Derek's instincts buzzed, and yet there was no tension in her shoulders, no hurried movement, no telltale signs of shoplifting, casing, or distraction theft. This woman wasn't here to steal a thing. She was here for a reason. And whatever that reason was, it had nothing to do with shopping. As she tucked the notebook into her coat pocket and disappeared down the far corridor, Derek remained still, silent, alert, and more curious than he'd care to admit. Something told him this wasn't the last time he'd see her, and that gut feeling, it was rarely wrong. The scream cut through the murmur of lunchtime chatter like glass breaking. Derek's head snapped toward the sound before the crowd even registered what was happening. In the middle of the atrium, just outside the bookstore, a woman staggered backward, one hand reaching for a shoulder strap that was no longer there. Her notebook clattered to the ground, pages flaring like wings as it slid across the tile. She froze for a second, then spun around. "My bag! He took my bag!" People started gasping, stepping back, turning in confusion. Some fumbled for their phones. Others just watched. No one moved, except Derek. His legs were already in motion before she finished the sentence. The thief, a skinny guy in a black hoodie and scuffed sneakers, was weaving through the foot traffic fast, but not fast enough. Derek's boots pounded against the floor, echoing across the mall like thunder. The distance between them narrowed with every stride. "Security!" Derek barked, loud enough to make heads snap and people stumble out of the way. The thief didn't slow. He ducked under a velvet rope line, shoved past a couple near the pretzel stand, and sprinted toward the service corridor near the restrooms. Derek veered left, cutting off the corner. He knew this building better than anyone. Every shortcut, every blind spot, every dead end. The thief darted through a side hallway, thinking he could lose him in the maze behind the food court. Wrong move. Derek pushed harder, adrenaline surging. The hallway narrowed. A steel door slammed open ahead. The thief was nearly at the emergency exit until Derek lunged. The tackle hit like a train. They both crashed to the ground, the thief's shoulder smacking the tile hard enough to knock the wind out of him. Derek pinned him fast, one knee in his back, one hand on the bag. "You're done," Derek muttered, breath sharp but controlled. "Don't move." The thief writhed once, then went still. By the time mall security backup arrived, Derek was already standing, the stolen purse clutched in one hand. No scratches, no damage. He didn't speak, just handed the guy over and turned around, heading back through the corridor with the bag swinging at his side. He didn't even notice the crowd that had formed near the atrium, or the woman standing frozen, eyes wide, but she noticed him. And in that moment, everything quietly began to change. The moment the thief bolted, the mall erupted. Tables clattered, trays crashed to the floor, and a woman screamed as the man in the black hoodie shoved past her, nearly knocking her over. Derek's boots hit the tile with force, his lungs locking into a steady rhythm. This wasn't a drill. This was real, and he didn't hesitate. The thief sprinted into the food court, weaving through rows of tables and startled shoppers. Chairs scraped, kids cried, and phones flew into shaky hands. Derek didn't yell. He didn't waste breath. He focused on the back of that hoodie, black, against a blur of color and chaos. He cut corners tight, jumping a knocked-over chair, dodging a distracted teenager who hadn't even realized what was happening. The thief took a sharp left, heading toward the escalator. Derek cursed under his breath. If the guy got down to the lower level and hit one of the side exits, it'd take minutes to loop around. Minutes he didn't have. But the thief didn't wait. He leapt onto the down escalator, skipping steps 2 at a time. Derek didn't follow him. He jumped the divider and ran down the adjacent up escalator, moving against the flow, the teeth of the metal stairs biting at his boots. He cleared the last step with a grunt and landed on the first floor, just as the thief hit the bottom. Now they were level. The chase turned tighter. past the video game store, around a mother pulling her toddler out of harm's way, down the side corridor where fewer people walked, where the security cameras had blind spots. Derek's breathing got harder, heavier, but he didn't slow. His legs burned. His shoulder throbbed from where he'd clipped a kiosk on the turn. But the thief was just ahead now, nearly at the metal doors that led to the loading bay. If he got outside, not happening. Derek pushed forward, closing the last 5 feet, then 3, then 1, and launched. They hit the floor hard, the sound of the tackle echoing off concrete walls like a gunshot. The thief grunted, wheezed, tried to roll, but Derek already had a forearm across his neck and one knee in his back. Game over, he growled, breath ragged. The guy didn't resist, didn't have the wind left to try. Derek stood up slowly, his heartbeat pounding in his ears, sweat cold on his neck. He looked around the empty corridor, chest heaving. Just him, the thief, and the silence after the storm. No sirens, no applause. But the purse was still clutched in his hand, and that was enough. The crowd had mostly dispersed by the time Derek made his way back through the atrium, the recovered purse hanging from one hand. A few people lingered, whispering, casting glances his way like he was some kind of anomaly. Security guards didn't usually run, they didn't chase, they didn't tackle. But Derek did. He didn't meet their eyes, just kept walking, sweat drying cold beneath his uniform, a faint ache spreading in his shoulder. His pulse was still settling, but his focus stayed locked, head up, eyes scanning just in case. She was standing near the fountain, right where she'd dropped her notebook. Someone had picked it up and placed it on the bench beside her. Her hands were clasped in front of her like she didn't know what else to do with them. She looked composed, at least on the outside. But Derek had seen real fear, and it was still in her eyes, buried beneath the practiced calm. He approached slowly, offering the bag without ceremony. "Everything's in there," he said. "Didn't even get the zipper open." She stared at the purse for a second like she wasn't sure it was real. Then she took it with both hands, clutching it tightly to her chest. A long silence stretched between them before she finally found her voice. Thank you," she said, quiet but firm. You didn't have to run after him like that." Derek gave a small shrug. "Sure I did," she blinked. "Why?" He glanced around the mall, then looked back at her. "Because it's my job," he said simply, "and because people deserve to feel safe in places like this." A flicker of something crossed her face. Surprise, maybe, or something deeper, like she hadn't expected anyone to say that, especially not someone like him. "I didn't even get your name," she said. He smiled faintly. "Derek!" She opened her mouth like she was about to say more, but before she could, his radio crackled with static, and a voice barked, "Derek, copy? We need you by North Hall entrance. Possible shoplifting." He raised the walkie. "On my way." Then he turned, giving her a small nod. "Take care." And just like that he walked off. Back to the noise, back to the routine, back to being invisible. But behind him she stood still, watching him go, bag in hand, her eyes fixed on something she couldn't quite name. And for the first time, she didn't write anything in her notebook. The moment was quiet again. The chaos had faded, swallowed by the mall's usual rhythm, people buying, selling, wandering. The air felt thinner now, as if the collective breath everyone had been holding had finally been exhaled. Derek didn't care about the lingering stares or the security staff that finally showed up late, asking too many questions with not enough urgency. She was still there, standing with the purse clutched tight to her side. Her shoulders were square now, tension melted into a kind of curious disbelief. She watched him carefully, like she was still trying to figure him out. "No paperwork?" she asked, stepping beside him as he moved toward the far corridor. "No incident report? No signature or statement or whatever security people usually do?" Derek paused just long enough to glance over his shoulder. "Nah," she tilted her head. "Why not?" He gave her a faint smile. "Guy didn't get far. Didn't hurt anyone. You got your stuff back. No need to make it a production. You chased him through half the mall. Derek shrugged like it was nothing, like his ribs didn't still ache from the fall, like he hadn't just sprinted harder than he had in years. Just doing what I'm paid to do. She studied him a second longer, then extended her hand. I'm Claire. He looked at her hand, but didn't take it. Not out of rudeness, just habit. He nodded once, polite, detached. Nice to meet you. You're not going to give me your name? I'm just the guy who got your bag back. But you... He cut her off with a gentle chuckle. Look, I'm glad you're okay. That's all that matters. And with that, he turned. No badge flourish, no proud strut, just a quiet, measured pace as he disappeared into the crowd like he always did, unnoticed, uncelebrated. Claire stood frozen, the noise of the mall returning like a tide around her. Something about him, his calm, his certainty, the way he didn't seem to need recognition, stuck with her. She pulled the notebook from her bag, opened it, then paused. And for the first time since stepping into that mall, she wrote down a name she didn't yet know. But she made a promise to herself. She would find out. The mall was still waking up when Derek walked through the north entrance, his boots echoing in the quiet space where the overhead lights hadn't fully flickered on yet. He liked this hour, the calm before the noise, when the corridors were empty and the storefronts still slept behind their security grates. It was the only time he didn't feel like a shadow. He tapped in at the security office, clipped on his badge, and checked the overnight logs. Nothing out of the ordinary. A false alarm at the delivery dock, a motion trigger by the arcade. He sipped his coffee in silence, the room dim, the hum of old fluorescent lights filling the air like static. Then the buzz started. Jason pushed through the door, still chewing on a breakfast sandwich, his mouth half full. You hear? Derek didn't look up. Hear what? Jason leaned on the desk, smirking. The new owner, she's coming in today, doing a walkthrough. Apparently bought the whole mall last week. Quiet deal, no press. First day on site. Derek arched a brow. Didn't know the mall was even up for sale. Jason laughed. That's the point, man. Whole place is probably getting gutted. You didn't notice the suits scoping out all the anchor stores last week? Derek had noticed. He just didn't care to speculate. Too many times he'd seen promises of revitalization end with pink slips and padlocks. She got a name? Derek asked casually, though a weird twinge was forming in his gut. Claire something, Jason mumbled through another bite. Fancy type. Supposed to be some retail exec from New York. Real sharp. The name landed hard. Derek blinked slowly. Coffee cup paused midair. Claire. Jason didn't notice. He just kept talking. They're making a big deal about it. Want everything looking spotless. Ops manager is already in a panic. Told us no slouching, no food at stations, no side conversations. Derek set the cup down. So, we're pretending this place runs smooth for a day? Jason grinned. Exactly. Don't screw it up, hero. But Derek didn't respond. His mind was already somewhere else, back to the way she looked yesterday, poised, quiet, watching everything. He hadn't expected to see her again. He definitely hadn't expected her to own the building. And now? Now? He wasn't sure what the hell was coming next. The knock on the door wasn't polite. It was a bang, sharp and urgent, followed by the heavy clomp of fast-moving heels on tile. The security break room door flew open, and in strode Marcy Benson, head of mall operations, clipboard clutched like a weapon, and a scowl etched deep into her face. Everyone straightened instinctively. Even Jason sat up, dropping the half-eaten muffin he'd been balancing on his knee. Derek remained where he was, arms folded, leaning against the far wall, eyes quietly tracking her movement. All right, listen up, Marcy snapped, sweeping the room with a glare that dared anyone to blink. Today is not the day to screw around. We are officially under inspection. The new owner is in the building. She's walking every corridor, looking at every corner, and watching every single one of you. Jason raised a hand half-heartedly. Is she going to quiz us or something? Marcy spun toward him like a missile. If she does, and you say something stupid, I swear to God, I'll reassign you to bathroom checks for a month." Jason's hand dropped. She turned back to the group. "No gum, no personal calls, no leaning, lounging, flirting, or disappearing. You're not just security today. You're the face of the mall. So make it look good. That means clean uniforms, full patrols, and for God's sake, try not to act like you've never held a job before." Derek said nothing. His uniform was always pressed. His patrols were always complete. He didn't do the job halfway, didn't know how. Marcy's eyes landed on him, just for a second longer than the others. She didn't say anything. But the silence between them said enough. He saw the subtle shift in her expression, the reluctant respect, maybe, or just the awareness that if anyone here made them look good, it would be him. "Dismissed," she barked. "And remember, she's not just here to look. She's here to decide who stays and who goes." That part landed heavier than the rest. The room emptied slowly, murmurs rising as guards shuffled back to their posts. Derek stayed a moment longer, watching Marcy scribble something on her clipboard before storming off again. "Who stays and who goes." The words echoed. Not that he was afraid, not yet. But now he knew this wasn't just a walkthrough, this was a test, and someone somewhere was keeping score. The mall felt different, not louder, not busier, just charged, like something was about to shift, and everyone could feel it, even if they couldn't explain why. Derek stood near the atrium railing, sipping his second cup of coffee, trying to shake the creeping sense that today was going to unfold in a way he hadn't prepared for. Then the elevator dinged. He barely glanced at it. Another department manager, maybe, or one of the upper-level execs playing dress-up for the new boss. But when the doors slid open, he froze. There she was, Claire. Same poised stride, same calm, calculating eyes. Her coat today was navy, tailored to precision, heels clicking with quiet authority. She wasn't carrying the notebook this time, but she didn't need to. Every step screamed purpose. A small team of suits flanked her, trying to keep up, whispering updates, pushing tablets into her hands. But she didn't look at them. She was already scanning them all. And then her eyes landed on Derek. He straightened without meaning to. The coffee cup in his hand suddenly felt stupid, and for a half-second he actually considered setting it down on the floor like some awkward kid at a school dance. Claire slowed. Her entourage kept moving for a beat too long before realizing she'd stopped. She turned slightly, her eyes locking with Derek's like she'd been expecting him. He nodded, polite, neutral, the way he would for any other passerby. She smiled, not the polite one, not the one she used yesterday when she thanked him for retrieving her bag. This one was quieter, personal. Derek swallowed hard. Jason elbowed him from behind, not even hiding the grin. "Dude, is that her?" "Yep," Derek muttered. "The bag lady. She's the new owner." Jason blinked, stunned. "Bro!" Derek didn't answer. His chest was tight, heartbeat ticking up, not from nerves. From something else. That strange, low hum of realization that the game had changed. He thought he'd done a good deed and walked away. But Claire? She hadn't forgotten a thing. The office smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet cleaner, the usual scent cocktail of a place no one ever really cleaned, just wiped down in passing. Derek sat hunched over a maintenance log when the knock came. Not the usual sharp rap from his supervisor, but a soft, composed tap. Precise. Intentional. He looked up. Claire stood in the doorway. The hallway behind her was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt arranged. Her coat was off now, revealing a slate-gray blouse, elegant but unassuming. Her eyes moved around the room for half a second before landing on him again. "Got a minute?" she asked. Derek blinked. Sure." She stepped in, closed the door gently behind her. No assistant, no entourage, just her. He stood, out of instinct more than anything else. Suddenly the coffee stains on the file cabinet behind him felt louder. The rip in the chair cushion looked bigger. He wasn't used to people like her in rooms like this. Not when they weren't yelling. Claire folded her arms, leaning casually against the filing cabinet, like she wasn't the owner of everything above and below them. I didn't get a chance to say thank you. Not properly, she said. Derek shook his head. I told you. It was nothing. It wasn't nothing, she said, voice firm but warm. You chased a man down in a full mall, recovered my bag, didn't ask for credit, didn't even give me your name. He hesitated. People don't usually ask. Well, I am. Her tone held weight, not demand, not authority, something quieter, more human. Derek, he said finally. Derek Hall, she smiled. Nice to officially meet you, Derek. He felt like he should say something more, but the words got caught somewhere between suspicion and confusion. Why was she here? What did she want from him? Claire glanced around the dingy office, then back at him. You've worked here long? Couple years, he said. Before that, other malls, same kind of thing. She nodded slowly, thoughtful. You're good at your job. He didn't know how to respond to that, not when it came from the person who signed every paycheck in the building. He just managed to quiet. Thanks. There was something in the way she looked at him, like she was studying a detail she didn't expect to find, not the uniform, not the badge, him. And for the first time in a long time, Derek didn't feel invisible. He felt seen. Claire didn't leave right away. She stood there a moment longer, arms still folded, her gaze thoughtful, like she was deciding whether to say something else or let silence do the work. Derek shifted slightly, unsure of where to look, suddenly aware of how cramped the office felt, how the peeling linoleum and flickering ceiling light seemed to shrink the space around them. Can I ask you something? She said finally. Derek shrugged. Sure. What's your story? He let out a soft, dry chuckle. What, like a movie pitch? Claire gave a half smile. I'm serious. You don't act like a guy just killing time between paychecks. Derek looked down at the desk. The maintenance log still sat open, half a line filled in, his pen resting beside it. He considered brushing it off, playing it cool. That was the easy route, the one that didn't make him vulnerable. But something about her tone, curious, not condescending, disarmed him. Not much to tell, he said finally. Just work, rent, sleep, repeat. Come on, she said softly. That's not a story. That's a schedule. He sighed, leaning back slightly against the wall. Used to think I'd be a cop. Took a couple courses after high school, even got through the first round of academy interviews. Then my mom got sick, early onset Alzheimer's. I dropped out to take care of her. That was 6 years ago. Claire's expression softened. Been doing mall security ever since, he continued, voice steady but distant. Pays enough to keep her in a decent facility. Not great, but it's safe, stable. She nodded, slow and deliberate. And what about you? What do you get out of it? He shrugged. Peace of mind, I guess, that she's okay. There was a pause, quiet and heavy. Then he added, almost as an afterthought, Landlord's been breathing down my neck. I'm a couple weeks behind, thinking about picking up night shifts somewhere else. Claire didn't speak right away. Her eyes didn't waver, though. She wasn't judging him. She was listening, really listening. Still, he said with a small, tired smile, beats doing nothing. And just like that, Derek folded the conversation shut like an old letter, creases worn, corners frayed. Because some things, no matter how much pain they carried, weren't meant to be read out loud, not all the way. Claire didn't glance at her watch once. That alone told Derek something. People in her position usually had their eyes glued to the time, always calculating what came next. But she just stood there, like she had all day, like whatever meeting waited beyond that office door could wait a little longer. She looked around the dingy space again, at the crooked corkboard covered in outdated schedules, the stack of incident reports no one had filed, the stale coffee pot in the corner that hadn't seen a scrub in weeks. You know, she said, almost casually, I've been thinking, this place could use a stronger leadership presence in security. Derek blinked. You don't say. She turned back to him. Not just bodies in uniforms, someone who actually cares what's happening here. Someone who watches things others don't. He smirked. That a compliment or a warning? Maybe both. He shook his head, laughing under his breath. You want me in charge? Of this circus? Claire didn't laugh. Her expression stayed steady. That was what made Derek pause. The look in her eyes, she wasn't joking. I'm serious, she said. So am I, he replied, gesturing to the walls, to the dusty office, to the chaos just outside the door. You know what this place is. It's a broken vending machine, loud, cheap, and stuck in 1998. And yet you're here, she said. Every day. That doesn't mean I want to run it. No, she said, but you do run it. You just haven't been given the title. Derek folded his arms, leaning against the filing cabinet. There was a flicker of something behind his eyes, part disbelief, part discomfort. I'm not management material, he muttered. I don't do politics. I don't do ass-kissing. I fix problems. I don't wear clipboards. Exactly, Claire said. That's why I'm asking. He looked at her, long and hard, like he was trying to find the catch, the hook, the trap. There wasn't one. Just her, standing in a run-down office, seeing something in him no one had bothered to look for in years. I don't know what to say, he admitted. She offered a small smile. Just think about it. Then she turned and walked out, leaving him in the silence, just him, the buzzing light overhead, and a question that suddenly didn't sound as ridiculous as it should have. You want me in charge? He looked down at his hands. Maybe. Just maybe. Claire paused at the door, hand already on the handle, when she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small white business card. She turned back, her heels quiet against the worn tile, as she crossed the room. She held it out, steady and sure. If you decide you want something more than this, she said, her voice low, call me. Derek looked at the card like it was something fragile, something rare. Her name was printed in clean, bold font, Claire Delaney. Owner, Delaney Property Group. A direct line, no receptionist, no barriers. He didn't take it right away. He wasn't used to things like this. People offering without a catch, without pity. When he finally did reach out, it was slow, cautious, like the card might disappear the second it touched his fingers. Claire gave him a small smile. No pressure, just think about it. And then she was gone. The door clicked shut behind her and the room felt colder, quieter. Derek stared down at the card, his thumb tracing the edge of the thick paper. Clean-cut, minimal, intentional. It didn't feel like some generic corporate token. It felt personal. He sat down slowly, the chair creaking beneath him, the buzz of the overhead light humming louder now. He turned the card over once, then again, just to make sure it was still real. For a long moment he didn't move. He just stared. Then, for the first time in longer than he could remember, something shifted. It wasn't joy, not quite. It wasn't relief either. It was quieter than that, lighter, like standing outside after a storm and realizing the clouds had moved on. Hope. Not the loud kind, not the kind that makes promises it can't keep, but the kind that sneaks in through the cracks, the kind that settles in your chest like maybe, just maybe, you don't have to live the rest of your life in the background. Derek tucked the card carefully into his wallet, folding it between two worn receipts like something sacred, and then, slowly, he smiled. Not for anyone else, just for himself. The hallway outside the staff lounge was louder than usual, not in volume but in tone, that low, breathy kind of conversation where words drop between glances, followed by the tight conspiratorial laughter of people who think they're in on something. Derek didn't have to hear it all to know it was about him. He caught the tail end as he passed by. You see her walk right into the security office? Who does that? Jason's voice, lazy, mocking, stretched out like he was telling a joke he didn't quite believe. She's not stupid. She knows who can make her look good. Guess our boy's playing his cards right. Another voice added. Mike maybe, or one of the part-timers from nights. Smart move, honestly. Get close to the new owner. Maybe ride it into a desk job. Then the laugh came. Not mean exactly, but sharp enough to cut. Derek didn't break stride. He walked past them like he hadn't heard a thing, his eyes forward, his face unreadable. But something in his chest tightened, quietly, slowly, like a rope being pulled. They didn't know. Not about his mom, not about the rent, not about the years spent chasing broken promises and dead-end jobs while trying to keep his head above water. They didn't know that the conversation with Claire hadn't started with him kissing up, but with him doing his damn job, the way he always did. Still, the whispers followed him. Even when the voices faded, they stayed with him, in the shuffle of passing footsteps, in the way someone stopped talking when he entered the room, in the glances he caught from the corners of his eyes. Derek said nothing. He didn't correct them. He didn't explain. But when he reached the end of the hall and turned into the stairwell, he paused, just for a second. His hand gripped the railing a little tighter than usual, because that seed they'd planted, it hadn't taken root. But it was there, sitting in the back of his mind, reminding him that if he stepped forward, really stepped forward, he wasn't just climbing, he was being watched. And not everyone was hoping he'd make it to the top. The care home was quiet, the kind of quiet that never felt peaceful, just padded and slow, like sound didn't have the strength to echo anymore. Derek buzzed in through the main doors, nodded at the nurse at the front desk, and walked the familiar path down the hallway, lined with soft yellow lights and framed paintings that hadn't changed in years. Room 214, second door on the left. He pushed it open gently. His mother sat by the window, her silver hair brushed neatly, her hands folded in her lap. She was staring out into the small garden beyond the glass, where a lone bird feeder swayed in the breeze. She didn't turn when he entered. She rarely did these days. "Hey, Ma," he said softly, setting down a paper bag with her favorite cookies and a small potted plant he'd picked up from a stall outside the mall. She blinked slowly, but didn't respond. He didn't take it personally. He pulled a chair beside her and sat down, letting the silence stretch out. There was no need to fill it. She wasn't the same woman who used to lecture him for leaving his boots by the door or staying out past curfew. Alzheimer's had taken pieces of her slowly, like a thief that never rushed. Derek reached over and gently placed the plant on the windowsill. "I remember telling you when I was 12 I was going to be a cop," he said quietly. "Said I'd be the one cleaning up the streets. You laughed and said I'd make a good one, but only if I learned to stop rolling my eyes at everything." He chuckled softly. She didn't. "I did try, Ma. Signed up for the academy. Passed the first rounds. Was even ready to leave for training. But then you forgot my name one morning." His voice caught just a little. "Life didn't go that way." She finally turned to look at him. Her eyes were tired, but they landed on his face like maybe, just maybe, they recognized something. Not his name, not the man, but the shape of him, the weight of love that never went away. He smiled gently. "That's okay, though. I still wear the uniform, just a different one." And for a moment it felt like enough. The shrill screech of the fire alarm shattered the hum of the afternoon rush. Shoppers froze mid-step, heads snapping toward the ceiling as the lights began to flash in rhythmic pulses. Some instinctively ducked, others dropped what they were holding. The smell hit a second later, sharp, chemical, and unmistakable. Burning plastic. Derek was on the second floor when it started, near the escalator, doing a routine sweep. His radio exploded with static and overlapping voices, each one louder and more panicked than the last. "Something's wrong by the arcade. Smoke in the west corridor. Is this a drill?" It wasn't a drill. He was already moving. By the time he reached the lower level, people were flooding out of storefronts in confused clusters. Mall employees waved their arms frantically, trying to direct traffic without any real plan. The overhead speakers hadn't triggered the automated evacuation yet. Too much delay in the system. Too many approvals needed from people who weren't even on site. But Derek didn't wait for permission. "Keep it calm, move to the exits," he shouted. cutting through the foot traffic like a blade. His voice was sharp but steady, commanding. No panic. Panic spread like fire, faster than flames, louder than alarms. He veered right, heading toward the arcade hallway. That's where the smoke was coming from, thick black wisps curling along the ceiling tiles. He pulled his jacket over his mouth and pushed forward. Behind the snack bar counter, a small power strip had burst into flames, sparking wildly beside a cheap popcorn machine. Wires hissed and snapped. 2 employees were trying to throw napkins at it. Derek shoved past them, grabbed the fire extinguisher off the wall, yanked the pin, and doused the flames in short, controlled bursts. The hiss of foam swallowed the crackle of sparks until the fire sputtered, coughed, and finally gave up. Silence returned, thick and stunned. Behind him, someone muttered, "Holy shit." Derek lowered the extinguisher and turned. His shirt clung to him with sweat. His face was streaked tears with smoke. But his expression didn't change. "It's out," he said. No drama, no victory lap, just another problem solved while everyone else froze. And this time, Claire saw it happen. From the far end of the hallway, just beyond the food court archway, Claire stood still, half in shadow, half in smoke. She didn't move, didn't speak, didn't need to. She watched. The chaos that had rippled through the mall minutes earlier was still settling in waves. Shoppers were being ushered outside, kids were crying, store alarms still blinked behind glass gates. But Derek, he didn't waver. He didn't bark orders or puff his chest. He didn't grandstand. He just acted. When the fire had flared, she'd watched him push through the panic without hesitation. Saw how he grabbed the extinguisher, checked the ceiling vents, then scanned the outlet to make sure it wouldn't spark again. Even now, as others hovered around the scene, buzzing with questions and adrenaline, he was moving with quiet efficiency, checking the back of the arcade, confirming no one was left inside, relaying information over the radio with clipped, professional calm. Claire had been through enough boardroom emergencies to recognize the difference between authority and leadership. Most people didn't have both, but Derek did. She leaned against the column, arms crossed, lips pressed into a thoughtful line. Around her, a few junior managers fluttered with their tablets and anxious glances, unsure if they should speak. One of them stepped toward her. "Miss Delaney, should we—" She raised a hand, silencing them without a word. Her eyes never left Derek. She noticed how he helped one of the arcade workers sit down, handed them a bottle of water from his own pouch. How he didn't speak unless he had to. How he didn't look for approval. He wasn't doing it to impress anyone. He was doing it because it was the right thing to do. When the all-clear came through and the fire department finally arrived, late as expected, Derek stepped aside without complaint, offering a clean handover and a short report. He gave credit to others, downplayed himself. Claire's eyes followed him as he wiped his hands on his pants and started back down the hall, already scanning them all again, like the whole thing had been a Tuesday afternoon inconvenience. And still, she didn't say a word. She just watched him walk away, and filed away every detail. The knock came just after 5. Derek was finishing up the last of his shift reports, hands still smudged with ash from earlier. The mall had quieted down again, the kind of hush that came after a scare, tense, tired, grateful. He hadn't eaten since breakfast. His legs ached, his throat was raw. But he was still standing. He opened the office door to find Claire waiting in the hallway, alone. "Got a minute?" she asked. He nodded, unsure why his chest suddenly tightened. They walked in silence to the administrative wing, where the offices were bigger, cleaner, and somehow colder. She held the door open for him, motioned to the chair in front of her desk. He didn't sit. Claire leaned against the edge of the desk, arms folded. No tablet this time, no clipboard, just her. The woman who now owned every brick and tile of the place he'd spent years walking like a ghost. "I saw what you did today," she said quietly. Derek looked down, a little embarrassed. "Wasn't much. Just handled it before it got worse." "No," she said. "You handled it while everyone else panicked. He shrugged. That's the job, isn't it? Claire shook her head. No, that's the job most people forget how to do. Silence settled between them, not heavy, but charged. She took a breath. I want you to lead security for the entire mall. The words hit him harder than the fire alarm. Derek stared at her, unsure he'd heard her right. What? Head of security? Full-time leadership? New budget? You'd be hiring, training, rebuilding the entire system the way it should have been done years ago. Cameras, response protocols, even public engagement. You'd report to me directly. He didn't answer. Couldn't. His mind raced, stuttering between disbelief and fear and something else he hadn't let himself feel in a long time. Pride. You've already been doing the work, she said. Now I just want to give you the title and the resources to do it right. Derek swallowed hard, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't have a degree, no certifications, I'm not... You're exactly what this place needs. He didn't know what to say, so he stood there, stunned, in a room where everything had just changed. And for once, the silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was sacred. Derek stood in the center of her office, the offer still ringing in his ears like an echo he couldn't shut off. He wasn't blinking. He wasn't breathing right. Just stuck. The idea of leading anything, let alone the entire security team of a mall this size, felt foreign, like someone had handed him a suit 2 sizes too big and expected it to fit tomorrow. He shifted his weight, rubbed the back of his neck, and finally spoke, voice quiet but heavy. I don't know if I can. Claire didn't flinch. She didn't tilt her head or smile politely or fill the air with reassurances like most corporate people did when they were trying to push paperwork through a scared man's chest. She just looked at him, calm, clear. You already are. Derek let out a soft, humorless laugh. You don't know that. I do, she said. I watched you. That fire could have gotten worse, he muttered, eyes drifting toward the window. I didn't know if the extinguisher would be enough. I didn't even check with the command board before I moved. Technically, I broke protocol and saved a corridor full of people in the process. He paced once slowly, his boots echoing too loud on the polished floor. I've never led a team. I've never given orders. I've spent years trying not to be seen, trying to keep my head down, stay out of the way. And yet everyone looked to you today, Claire said. Not because they had to, because they trusted you to act. He stopped. That word, trusted, sat different in his chest. It wasn't about control or title or chain of command. It was about responsibility, about weight. And he felt all of it. You don't need a degree or a resume stacked with buzzwords, she added. You need instinct. You need heart. You need the spine to act when no one else does. He looked at her then, really looked. And what he saw wasn't expectation. It was belief. Derek swallowed hard. What if I fail? Claire's voice was steady. Then fail forward, but don't let fear make the decision for you. And just like that, the room felt smaller. But his world? It suddenly felt a lot bigger. The next morning, Derek showed up 15 minutes earlier than usual. He walked into the security office with a fresh uniform, the new one Claire had fast-tracked to him overnight. Darker stitching, cleaner lines. A proper badge with his name etched in bold lettering instead of the cheap laminated tag he used to clip to his chest. It felt heavier somehow, but not in a bad way. He stood in front of the cracked mirror near the lockers, adjusted the collar, and stared at himself for a long moment. Not in awe, not in pride, just in recognition. This was real now. By 9 a.m., he had the full team in the conference room, some of them still rubbing sleep from their eyes, others glancing around with vague confusion, like they'd wandered into the wrong meeting. Jason sat in the back, with his arms crossed, chewing gum, and smirking like he was watching a high school presentation. Derek didn't flinch. We're not going to run this place the way we used to, he said, voice low but clear. We're not waiting for problems to find us. We're going to get ahead of them. No slideshow, no handouts, just new expectations. He started with patrol routes, overhauled them, shifted coverage to blind spots, staggered rotations to prevent complacency. Then he moved on to camera reviews, staff response drills, and incident reporting. Gone were the sloppy logs scribbled in ink barely legible. In came typed reports, time-stamped, signed, stored. Some of the guards grumbled. Mike muttered something under his breath about power trips, but Derek ignored it. He wasn't looking for applause. He was building something. By week 2, things had changed. Clean records, faster response times. Staff actually showed up early, some of them, anyway. The mall felt tighter, sharper, like someone had finally taken the dust off the lens. One afternoon he passed the security desk and saw a guest approach to report a missing child. The rookie guard on duty, barely out of training, responded with calm clarity and immediate action. Radioed the others, locked into protocol. Derek didn't interrupt. He just stood back, arms folded, and watched the process unfold exactly how he'd written it. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like a man drifting between shifts. He felt like a leader. It started with a radio call that didn't make sense. Possible shoplifting in Sector D suspect headed toward east exit. No visual confirmation. Derek responded instantly, rerouted 2 guards and combed through camera footage. Nothing. No suspicious movement, no one running, just regular foot traffic. He logged it, shrugged it off. Could have been a miscommunication, but then it happened again and again. False leads, misdirected reports, cameras that were supposedly down only to find they were never offline. Minor things, just enough to cause friction, to make Derek question himself in front of the team. It didn't take long to figure out who was behind it. Roy Chambers, 18 years on the job, veteran mall security, and a walking embodiment of bitterness wrapped in a thinning badge. The guy who'd been passed over for leadership more times than he could count, and now had to answer to someone he considered a rookie in every way that mattered to him. Derek caught him in the break room once, leaning back in a chair with his boots up on the table, smirking as 2 junior guards hung on his every word. "Whole place went soft," Roy muttered. "We used to handle things with common sense. Now we're stuck running drills like it's boot camp." Derek stood just inside the doorway, arms crossed. "You got a problem with the new system." Roy didn't even flinch. "Just think it's funny. Place runs fine for years, and suddenly we're taking orders from a guy who tackled one purse snatcher and thinks he's Jason Bourne." The silence that followed was thick. The juniors looked from one man to the other like they might bolt. Derek didn't rise to it. Not there. Not in front of an audience. But later, when he reviewed the log and found Roy had skipped 2 rounds and falsified timestamps, he didn't let it go. He filed it, quiet, professional, by the book. Still, the rumors kept coming. Derek only got promoted because the owner likes him. He's trying to make us look bad. He's gunning for anyone who doesn't fall in line. It wasn't true, but truth didn't matter when whispers move faster than facts. And as Derek stood alone in the darkened control room, overlooking the quiet mall through a wall of glowing screens, he understood something with perfect clarity. Leadership didn't come with a badge. It came with resistance. Roy was waiting for him in the lower corridor near the loading docks, leaning against the wall like he owned the place. Cigarette between 2 fingers, even though it was against policy. He didn't bother hiding it when Derek walked up. If anything, he looked amused. Derek didn't speak at first. He just stared at him, silent, unmoving. "Something on your mind, boss?" Roy asked, the word laced with mockery. Derek's eyes dropped to the smoke curling in the air, then back to Roy. "You've been writing false reports, skipping patrols, spreading lies." Roy took a slow drag and exhaled. "You sure about that?" "I don't make accusations unless I've got proof." A flicker crossed Roy's face. Not fear, just recognition. He knew he'd been caught. "So what?" he muttered. "You gonna write me up? Call Claire? Tell her the bad man's being mean?" Derek didn't flinch. "No, I'm gonna tell you face to face." Roy straightened slightly, his smirk thinning. "I didn't ask for this job," Derek said. "I didn't campaign. I didn't shake hands or play politics. I did the work, every day, while you coasted on a patch and a memory of how things used to be." Roy said nothing, but the tension in his jaw was sharp. Derek stepped closer, not aggressive, just grounded, solid. "I earned this, every inch of it, and I'm not backing down because it makes you uncomfortable." "You think you're better than me?" Roy growled. "No," Derek said calmly, "but I do think I'm the one doing the job, and if that bothers you, you've got two options: shape up or step aside." The silence between them crackled. Derek turned to leave, then paused. "Next time you put this team at risk with a false alarm or a skipped sweep, I won't pull you aside. I'll write it up. I'll send it to Claire myself." Roy didn't answer, didn't nod, just stood there, the cigarette burning down to his fingers. Derek walked away without looking back, not because he needed to prove anything, but because the only way to lead was forward. The banners hung from the upper rafters like a promise: New Horizon Mall, safer, stronger together. The grand reopening had been marketed for weeks, splashed across local radio spots, flyers, and the mall's freshly updated website. But the real transformation wasn't in the ads or the new lighting. It was in the bones of the place, the way it felt when you walked inside, cleaner, calmer, watched, but not in a cold way, like someone was finally paying attention. And at the center of it all was Derek. He stood near the main entrance, greeting people as they filed in, parents with strollers, teenagers with skateboards tucked under their arms, seniors who'd been walking those same halls since the 90s, all of them stepping into a place that finally looked like it gave a damn about them. Derek's new uniform was tailored, crisp, midnight navy with subtle silver accents, his badge polished to a shine. His nameplate no longer said security officer, it said Director of Safety Operations. It didn't change how he carried himself, same calm walk, same steady eyes. But people noticed now. They stopped. They thanked him. He didn't know what to do with the attention, not really, but he met it with quiet nods and a few firm handshakes. The new protocols rolled out like clockwork, clearly marked safety zones, emergency call stations, first aid kiosks, patrol rotations coordinated down to the minute. His team moved like they belonged here, not bouncers, not background noise, but guardians of the space. Near the food court, a local nonprofit had set up a booth, offering child ID cards and community watch resources. That was Claire's idea. She had stood beside Derek earlier that morning and said, "Security doesn't start with a badge. It starts with trust." He believed that now, not because it sounded good, because he'd built it. As the afternoon crowds grew, Derek stepped up to the second-floor balcony and looked down at the heart of the mall. Kids laughing, storefronts bustling. A little girl waved to him from the carousel below. He waved back. And in that moment, it didn't feel like just a mall anymore. It felt like a second chance, for everyone, including him. The stage was small, tucked beside the new information kiosk near the atrium, flanked by fresh planters and polished tile. Nothing flashy, no spotlight, just a simple microphone, a podium, and a crowd that had slowly gathered as word spread that the new owner was about to speak. Derek stood off to the side, just beyond the velvet rope, hands clasped behind his back. He didn't love crowds, never had. He preferred the view from the edge, where he could scan and measure without being seen. But today, something felt different. Claire stepped up to the mic. She wore a fitted blazer, sleek and simple, with her hair pulled back. Not trying to impress, she didn't need to. Her presence alone drew people in. The room hushed the second she took the podium. "Thank you all for being here today," she began. "When we began the process of revitalizing this mall, it wasn't just about updating storefronts or adding brighter lights. It was about restoring something deeper, a sense of safety, of dignity, of community." She'd let the words settle, scanning the faces in the crowd. We often overlook the people who keep things running, the ones who show up early, stay late, who handle the chaos when others run from it. We see the flashy jobs, the big titles, but we forget the foundation, the people who hold the line. Derek shifted slightly. He knew what was coming. Somehow he still wasn't ready. One of those people is someone you've probably walked past dozens of times without noticing. Someone who never asked for recognition but earned it in every step he took. When a woman was attacked, he ran. When the fire alarms went off, he acted. When this place needed leadership, he didn't wait to be asked. He showed up. She looked directly at him then. "Derek Hall, would you come up here, please?" He froze for just a second. Then he moved. The crowd began to clap, soft at first, then building. As he stepped forward, heads turned. People smiled. Some whispered his name. He didn't look for the attention. He didn't puff his chest or wave. He just stood next to Claire, eyes steady, jaw tight. And in that moment, under the soft hum of the atrium lights, he felt something he hadn't felt in years, like he mattered, for real. The applause didn't stop. It grew, rising in a wave that filled the atrium and echoed off the high glass ceiling. For once, it wasn't for a pop-up store grand opening or a holiday performer in a Santa suit. It was for a man in a navy blue uniform who had spent years blending into the background. Derek didn't know where to look. The lights above the stage suddenly felt too bright. He nodded once, politely, hands still at his sides, but his heart was thudding so hard he could feel it in his throat. He wasn't used to the sound of his own name rolling through a crowd like that. Claire leaned in slightly, whispered just enough for him to hear, "You deserve every second of this." Off to the side, his team stood in a neat row, Jason, Mike, even Roy. Some clapped with more enthusiasm than others, but none looked away. They were watching him now, really watching. And that meant something. Upstairs, in a quiet room at Brookside Memory Care, the TV buzzed with a live stream from the mall's social media page. A nurse had set up the tablet just right on the tray table. Derek's mom sat propped up in her recliner, eyes clouded but open, hands trembling slightly in her lap. She didn't speak much anymore. But as the camera panned to show her son standing beside the new owner of the mall, something shifted in her expression. Her lips parted just slightly, and her eyes, still fogged by years of forgetting, brightened with something rare. Recognition. A tear rolled slowly down her cheek, unnoticed. The nurse gently squeezed her hand. Back on stage, Derek finally allowed himself to breathe. The applause softened into something warm, something that wrapped around him like a weight being lifted. He caught sight of the camera in the back, remembered the setup Claire had mentioned. "We'll stream it live," she'd said, "for anyone who can't be there in person." And suddenly, he knew. She was watching. Not just the mall, not just the speech. His mom. She saw him. And for the first time in years, so did everyone else. The mall was different at night, not just quieter, hushed. The kind of quiet that sinks into your skin and slows your breathing. Most of the stores had closed, gates drawn, lights dimmed. The smell of cinnamon from the last pretzel batch still lingered in the air, faint and sweet. The cleaning crew had already finished their rounds, floors gleaming beneath the soft amber glow of the night lights. Derek walked the halls slowly, hands in his pockets, boots echoing gently with each step. No radios crackling, no alarms blaring. No emergency calls buzzing through his belt, just silence and peace. He passed the food court, chairs stacked, napkin dispensers full, tables spotless. His eyes moved from one corner to the next like they always had, tracing lines only he understood. Every turn, every blind spot, every hallway. He used to patrol alone when no one else cared. He still checked them now, out of habit more than necessity. But this time he wasn't chasing shadows. He was watching over something. His reflection passed by in the darkened glass of a storefront. The new uniform fit better than the last one, not just in size, but in purpose. It didn't feel like a costume anymore. It felt like it belonged to him, like he belonged here. He stopped near the center of the atrium just beneath the skylight and looked up. Through the glass, the night sky was smudged with stars. You couldn't see many from here, not with all the city light. But a few still fought through. Derek let out a slow breath, one hand resting lightly on the railing in front of him. He'd spent so long just trying to hold things together. Pay the bills, keep his mom safe, avoid being the guy people blamed when things went wrong, never asking for more, never believing he deserved it. But now the mall was clean, quiet, safe. And for the first time in a long time, Derek wasn't just proud of the job he'd done. He was proud of the man he'd become.